We are through the month of October, but who got off to a hot start this year and who has been surprisingly struggling? We've got all that, plus our women's hockey spotlight and a big weekend of hockey action ahead coming up on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to the Friday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. You could start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm Gil Martin of Locked On Islanders, and every Friday I am joined by Rachel Donner of Locked On Flyers. Happy Friday, Rachel.
Happy Friday, indeed. I can't believe it's November already.
Yeah, I hope everyone did have a safe and happy Halloween. It's November. It's still warm here in New York, but we turned the page on the first month of the hockey season, and there have been some very interesting developments that were a little bit of a surprise so far after the opening month of the year.
Yeah, and it's not like the biggest story of the NHL, but we have to give a shout out to the San Jose Sharks because they have won 3 games in a row. And if you had asked us even like a week ago if that would have been possible, probably would have said no. And we know like their quest to get a win in October actually turned out to be pretty good. They're still at the bottom of the division, but a 3-game win streak for that team is nothing to laugh at.
No, and it's good to see them finally getting some results for the hard work they've put in. And look, we know the Sharks are in the midst of a rebuild. They're not likely to be playoff contenders this year. But when you see the young talent start to click a little bit and you see the potential being realized, it's got to be an encouraging thing for the San Jose Sharks. And a little shout out also while we're at it. Couple of goals in this game for Will Smith.
Yeah, and I think, because of Macklin Celebrini, Will Smith has gotten a little bit of, either a short end of the stick in terms of attention on him, but also he has a little bit of a get out of jail free card, right? In the fact that, he has a little bit more room because there's the 2 of them there looking to have successful rookie seasons. And so I think that for him to have his moment this early in the season is a really good thing.
Yeah, good to see him getting on. And, maybe there's a little less pressure on Smith as a result of all the attention
Yeah.
Celebrini's getting. So he can take advantage of that. How about the Minnesota Wild? There's a team that isn't getting a lot of attention, and yet they're 6-1-2 through 9 games.
Yeah, they are a very interesting team. The Flyers have played them and actually won against the Minnesota Wild. So I understand how difficult it is to kind of get around their system. They make it very difficult for you to get good scoring opportunities. And I think that, the Wild are in the last year of their cap hell. And I think they're kind of looking to use this year as a springboard so that they're going to have all this free money in a lot of ways next season. And so try to make themselves an attractive free agent destination. And I think, getting off to a good start is a nice way to do it.
No doubt. And amazingly enough, they've played 9 games, only 2 of them at home, 7 on the road, and yet they've only lost 1 in regulation out of those 9 games. So little surprise there. How about the LA Kings? 6-3-2 in 11 games, and I don't think a lot of people expected them to be so high in the standings this early.
Yeah, I think, people expect them to make the playoffs or at least be borderline to make the playoffs in that division. But I think, them getting out to a pretty solid start. I think that, you look at their home record is obviously much better than their record on the road, but they also have played a limited number of home games, and they're going to have a lot more chances to rack up some points at home. I did see the video. They were at home when the Dodgers won the World Series. That was actually kind of fun. But I think, unless you're a Yankees fan, I guess. But
I guess.
the um, uh, but I do think that, for a team like the Kings that are in a tough division, racking up these points early is going to be very helpful down the road.
No doubt. And let's address both teams in the Battle of Alberta. The Flames kind of coming back to earth. They had a 5-0 start. They've now lost 4 straight. And the Oilers, they're kind of dead even after 11 games at 5-1.
Yeah, I think with the Oilers, we've seen this play before where they've gotten off to a rough start, and then gotten it together. This time around, it's a little different because of the Connor McDavid injury. We'll see how that affects them sort of medium term. I know it's not, in theory, supposed to be a long term situation for them, but it does make the circumstances a little bit different. That being said, they still probably should have gotten off to a better start this time around and should have learned their lesson. The Flames, on the other side, I think, we're definitely a surprise to get off to a hot start, pun intended. And I think that, for them, this is just leveling out and it's fine. And, this is kind of where they should and will be for the remainder of the season. But hopefully we'll see them, spatter in some wins and not have like significant losing streaks like this 4-game one they're on.
Yeah, that is something they
Mhm.
definitely want to avoid. And meanwhile, while Calgary has lost 4 straight, you flip it over to the Eastern Conference, the Carolina Hurricanes have won 5 in a row.
Don't love that for our teams, but love that for them. I think that, Carolina is a team that has gotten almost to the mountaintop, but not quite there. And their quest to kind of stay relevant and stay in that top tier of the Eastern teams in order to give themselves a shot to make another cup run gets harder and harder each year. And so, again, to get off to a pretty good start early is only going to help them in the long run when it comes to playoff position toward the end of the season.
No question about that. Are you surprised at the Florida Panthers being off to such a fast start? Usually there's a little bit of a Stanley Cup hangover. And yet Florida and Tampa Bay, both Florida teams, surprising people, I think, by being as good as they are early in the season.
Yeah, and of course, Tampa actually has the edge from a points percentage perspective for the month of October. But both teams on a 3-game win streak, and I think it is a little bit more surprising for Tampa. Obviously, with Stamkos departing, and we weren't quite sure if this team was going to have chemistry early on, and they have absolutely proven everybody wrong, that they know exactly who they are and have continued to play Cooper's system very well and have had the results to show it. I think that, you look at Florida on the other hand, and this is a team that just doesn't want to give up. And they want to put a statement out there that, yes, they won the Stanley Cup for a reason and they're a complete team. And I think that's something they've been showing in these early games.
No doubt about that. I want to give a little shout out also to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Yeah, they're in the middle of the pack in the standings, but 5-3-1 through their first 9 games after everything this franchise has been through during the offseason and the early part of the season. I'm impressed by this start by the Blue Jackets.
Yeah, I mean, you do, in fact, have to hand it to them. I think it's been such a difficult situation for them to manage and to come out, again, not just with some solid wins to start the season and have, a really good record coming out of the gate, but they're scoring a lot of goals. They're playing fun hockey. And I think it's really, really terrific for that team.
Did you expect the Boston Bruins to be 2 games under NHL 500 in October?
You know what's really interesting? So the Flyers played them earlier this week and will be playing them again tomorrow. So like twice in 1 week. And they cannot score goals. That's like a huge problem for them right now that I think they have like a lot of the defensive structure in place. Now, let's put that game against Carolina aside from last night where they just got shellacked. And that's where kind of maybe the other side of their game fell apart out of frustration, to be honest, because they've been playing okay defensively. And, they have a really good physical presence to drive guys to the outside and, prevent quality chances. But when you're not scoring goals yourself and there's a lot of pressure to do that, sometimes it just bites you and you just can't break through on that front. And I think that's kind of what's happening in Boston right now is that they're snake bit, they can't score. And then when you are frustrated on one side of your game, at a certain point, the other side of your game starts to crack. And that's what happened in that game against Carolina, in my
Yeah, they're
opinion.
squeezing the sticks. They're a little tense right
Yeah.
now. No
Yeah.
question about that. And real quick, two more teams I wanted to touch on briefly. The New Jersey Devils and the Washington Capitals over in the Metro.
Yeah, I think this was the year, we've said this year after year, is this the Devil's year? And this year it seems like it might be finally. But it's not unexpected given the talent level and like how young they are, but also, how skilled they are. It's just a matter of can these younger guys keep it going for a full season? I think it's not unexpected that they've gotten off to a good start here. Now, the Washington Capitals, on the other hand, were not expected to get off to as good a start as they are, but they have some really good players and they've been like actually doing such a good job with prospect development that they've been able to slot guys in who are very effective. And Connor McMichael is one of them. I think he's a player that doesn't necessarily get a lot of play league wide, but he has come in and just become a really important piece on this Capitals team. And so, I think they're going to be a good team and a team to be reckoned with for the course of this season.
All right. Well, it's been a surprising October. Best part, we've got a lot more NHL season ahead of us, and we've got more to get to on today's show. We'll be joined by Erica L. Ayala for our bi-weekly Women's Hockey Spotlight expansion, a big topic there. And we'll take a look at an exciting weekend ahead, including some more of the Global Series. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
Some of the best concerts of the year take place in the fall, and it's my favorite time to head to a show. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of listings. My favorite part of the Game Time app is that it's great for getting notified about super deals so you know you're getting the best bang for your buck. Best of all, they have all-in pricing, so there's no surprise fees at checkout when you activate that feature. Also, your tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through email. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
It is time for our bi-weekly Women's Hockey Spotlight. That means we welcome in Erica L. Ayala. Erica, how's it going?
Oh, it's, going well. If I don't think about the Kraken loss last night, I'm great.
All right. Well, the big issue right now, PWHL expansion. This is something I think a lot of people have been waiting for a long time. What is the latest news?
Sure. So Amy Shear has been making rounds at a lot of sports business type conferences. Last week, I got to hear from Amy Shear at the Sportigo conference. She spoke again at an ESPNW summit. And both times, Amy Shear let the audience know that the PWHL is moving forward with not fully expansion, but the expansion process. So I want to break this down a little bit because it's not necessarily something that we're going to see right away, but it is something that the organization is looking to to just get some more data on. So per Sportigo, again, that was the conference that I was at, the PWHL is moving forward, and they are accepting and are going to go through the RFP process. So RFP is an acronym. It stands for Request for Proposal. So right now, the PWHL is set up as a single entity, and there have been lots of conversations, not just in women's hockey, but throughout sports, whether one singular owner for all teams in a league versus individual ownership is the right move. I think overall, eventually having individual owners is a good thing. But again, this is a league that hasn't yet dropped the puck on their second season. So what the PWHL per Sportigo is hoping to evaluate in the markets is market size and media reach, available facilities and infrastructure, local economic opportunity, and corporate sponsorship leads, as well as community fan base, and youth hockey presence. So the idea here, and I've heard it floated around that maybe by 25, 26, we might see the first news of expansion. That would, of course, be for the next hockey season for the PWHL. But that's where we're at right now. So it is, they have announced that they are starting the process of investigating expansion in earnest.
How many teams do you think they will add in the next round of expansion? And ideally, where do you see the league settling as far as teams are concerned?
Sure, especially since the league is at 6 teams right now, I do think it makes sense to probably expand by about 2. I wouldn't do a singular expansion if they can help it, because then that gives you an odd amount of teams in a small group. I know the WNBA is going to have that in their upcoming season, but also they're at 12 teams right now, going to 13 as opposed to 6 going to 7. So that's a little bit different. It could help with scheduling and whatnot and the like. And for those watching on YouTube, you might have picked up that I am, putting out some good energy in some places. But again, regarding the criteria, I do think that Seattle could be a great area. When you think of hockey, obviously it's a newer hockey market at the pro level with the NHL coming. And now this is the Seattle Kraken's 4th season. But when you think about local and economic opportunity, when you think about community fan base and youth hockey presence, that is through and through in Seattle. I think when you also look at facilities and infrastructure, the Climate Pledge Arena is literally right there. And they have a great practice facility as well. And there are other teams that play at the junior level, which we've seen PWHL teams play in AHL facilities. So that could be something. I also think Pittsburgh. Now, Pittsburgh, I'm not sure hits the mark and fits the brief, Rachel, for all of these areas, 4 areas that have been identified. But it certainly, as you and I know, has been an area that has entertained and actually hosted women's hockey in the past.
Yeah, they have had so many exhibition events there, and the Penguins practice facility in Cranberry has been host to several like PWHPA events. And Pittsburgh does have the advantage, similar to Seattle. I would say that their main arena only has one primary tenant in the Pittsburgh Penguins. They don't have basketball teams in that city. Sorry, Seattle. I know you're still bitter about
Seattle
that.
Does have the Storm. That being
That's
said,
true.
They would not
But
be in the
off-season,
NHL.
though.
They wouldn't be or they're not in the hockey season. Yeah.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. So I think that there's that aspect of it. The thing that is the ding on Pittsburgh for me is geography, because I feel like Minnesota, and this was similar in the PHF, is kind of like hanging out there on its own geographically. And so to me, it would make more sense that if there's another US team, it would be closer to that team. And I know like Detroit is the city that has been mentioned. Now, the problem is they do have multiple tenants during the fall winter season in their main arena, in Little Caesars Arena. So I think that is a sticking point there in Detroit, even though they've had an exhibition game there as well, or third location games there. I think it was an official game, but it happened to be in Detroit. So that is kind of the little thing. One of the interesting cities that came up in, some of the discussions out there to me is Milwaukee, because Milwaukee has the benefit of being close-ish to Chicago and close-ish to Madison, Wisconsin. Like, it's kind of halfway in between the two in a lot of ways. So, and there's a lot of youth hockey in that area, and there's the Bucks, but nothing else in that arena. So I think that would be a very fascinating and out of left field option for them to go with.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting, Gil, that obviously we all live in the United States, but this is a league that has really split the teams equitably, at least the first 6 teams between the United States and Canada. And also, the only national television deal, broadcast deal that they have exists in Canada. So I have to think that there is, if not both teams in expansion early on, that Canada has to be a part of that. Quebec City has been mentioned in a few different articles that I've seen since Amy Shear's announcements at, again, the Sportigo conference and ESPNW conference. I think, though, if you think about some of the cities that we've mentioned, of course, if you go to Seattle, you could maybe get a double bang for your buck, because Seattle, Washington. I know that even on the NHL side of things, fans in Seattle have traveled to Vancouver before the Kraken were around, and then of course Vancouver fans traveling down. I think you could probably see the same thing in like a Buffalo. If you wanted to expand there, you have a team playing in New Jersey. I don't think that's the end of the world, though. We see that in a lot of sports, football, NHL. But I do think, Gil, that we'll probably see expansion to Canada as well as the United States in the next round.
Yeah, I think that is likely. And the other thing is, you brought up Seattle. Unless you go to a Vancouver or another West Coast city, Seattle geographically would be isolated, and travel costs go way up if you do that.
Yep. Yeah, that's true too. And so you'd have to look again at the economic model. From the reporting that I've seen, there's not really any indication of what expansion, the cost for expansion would be. But again, this might have to, if the league wants to benefit and be able to charge expansion fees, I would think, right, they'd have to restructure, because who would they be charging? Themselves? Like, they're the sole owners. So if they wanted to be able to have that as a source of income, which we of course know that NHL does that, the WNBA did that in a big way. The price for expansion in the WNBA was sky high this round. So that's another thing to consider. So I guess overall, it does seem like something that the league wants to move forward with. Again, the RFP process has started. I guess what we'll just have to wait and see is if this also means other structural changes for the league, including, of course, everything from travel to the model, the actual model, and sole or singular ownership of a team, as opposed to one ownership group for the entire league. We do want to give a quick update on Erica Howe. She has been a long-time goaltender in women's pro hockey, playing in the CWHL, part of the PWHPA, and of course playing with the Toronto team now. Also is one of a few players that we've seen in women's hockey that also serves as a firefighter. Erica Howe announced recently that since August, she has been dealing with her battle against breast cancer. She was diagnosed with breast cancer, and in a social media post, this one I'm looking at is on Instagram, says, quote, "Please don't send me any 'I'm sorry you have cancer' messages. Love and support is all I need. I consider myself one of the luckiest people on earth, and while I've been dealt a crap hand here, an army of people have shown up for me in ways I couldn't ever imagine. Breast cancer at 32 has been one heck of a ride so far. Not the battle I wanted, but it's the battle I got, and I am learning more about myself than I ever imagined. Cancer is about to meet its match. Fundraiser for cancer research coming soon." So Again, we will respect Erica's wishes. I know cancer is something that a lot of people have touch points, myself included. So Erica, and she shares this. Thank you for sharing your message. We support you, and we thank you for also raising awareness. And hey, looking forward to seeing Erica and all of those dealing with cancer of any kind come out on the winning side. So that is a tough update, but the hockey community, as we all know, is just so supportive. And so it's great to hear that Erica feels supported, and I'm sure she will continue to do so now that she has shared what she's going through.
And we certainly wish her all the best in her fight. It's never easy at 32, especially, to be dealing with cancer. So all the best to Erica Howe.
Indeed. Well, it sounds like always more to come. So we have the Women's Hockey Spotlight every other week. So we will do our best to give you all the news that's fit to podcast about here on Locked On NHL Women's Hockey Spotlight. But Rachel and Gil, thanks as always for joining me. And I'll see you in another couple of weeks.
All right. Thanks, Erica. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. All right, a busy weekend ahead. I am looking forward to this, and it starts with some international games. The Global Series continuing this weekend. 2:00 Eastern time, the Florida Panthers and the Dallas Stars, and that is going to be one heck of a game.
Yeah, we talked about the Panthers a little bit already, and Dallas is another team that's off to a very good start. And with some of these international games, like sometimes, honestly, you don't get the best hockey or the best teams necessarily, but this is a fantastic combination of teams to send over to Finland, and I am excited for both of them.
Yeah, should be a really good game for sure. The Winnipeg Jets remain 9-1 off to that fantastic start. And the Columbus Blue Jackets, who we just mentioned in the first segment, they have to host Winnipeg tonight.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tough one for Columbus, but I feel like if anybody is going to beat the Jets right now, maybe Columbus at home can find a way to do it.
We shall see. Definitely a challenge there. And how about this one, an East-West matchup? Tampa Bay visiting Minnesota.
Yeah, two teams that we talked about earlier in the show that are off to really good starts. And I think that this will be a good kind of gut check for both teams in terms of where they are and what it's going to look like for the bulk of the season, right? We're now kind of in like the mushy middle of the season in a lot of ways. You don't have like the newness of it. Teams are figuring each other out already, and you see patterns and whatnot. So this is a really good game for both teams.
And how about, can the Flames right the ship and end their losing streak? They host the New Jersey Devils.
I'm going to go with no, but it is in Calgary, but just the Devils are playing very well right now. And I just think that, the Flames have to figure out a way to get it together. And against the Devils is going to be a tough assignment.
No doubt about that. So Saturday, we start off early, 11 o'clock Eastern time. Again, the second game of the Global Series, Dallas and Florida. And then your Flyers hosting the Boston Bruins in a 1 o'clock Eastern time matinee.
Yeah, we talked about them earlier in the show as well, the Bruin side of it anyway. And, The Flyers are struggling a little bit early in this season, but have found a way to win against the Bruins already this week. Bruins are just in shambles right now. They have to come into Philadelphia to try and right the ship. I don't know. Afternoon games are always dicey for the Flyers, so I think this is a toss-up, in my opinion.
And then the Blue Jackets get a back-to-back. They have to visit the Capitals.
Yeah, now this is where it's gonna be tough for Columbus, because if they have to play a very tough game against Winnipeg to turn it around and go up against Washington, who's been playing very tough in Washington, this is where I think they're gonna split that back-to-back, Columbus is.
Very possible. Now, we've got some teams that are kind of struggling early, and yet they're going head to head. How about Buffalo and Detroit? Both 4-5-1, both hoping for better, but not there yet.
Yeah, I don't know. This is gonna be a game of attrition, I think, and to see, like, who can actually, stick this one out, but I don't know. I feel like Buffalo is the team that'll come out on top here, but, it'll be an interesting game.
And then you have Montreal and Pittsburgh. Again, two struggling teams hoping for better.
Yeah, I think, Pittsburgh is starting to be an alarm bell zone right now. I think Montreal at least has like, okay, we're in a rebuild kind of plan here, and Pittsburgh is trying to do a more aggressive retool, and with, Sid and Gino Malkin still there, like this is a very disappointing start to their season, and so like at some point they're going to have to figure it out. And I just don't know. Montreal is so unpredictable this year so far.
How about Colorado and Nashville? Again, what's wrong with the Avalanche?
I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with the Avalanche. I think that, sometimes good teams take a while to get it going. But I think a game against Nashville is a really good opportunity to have a decisive win. But Nashville has also struggled. I just don't know that this, like, a team like the Avalanche is the team that Nashville is going to figure it out against.
The Maple Leafs, with a rare Saturday road game, they go to St. Louis to take on the Blues.
Yeah, and the Blues just lost to the Flyers, so they're going to be looking to get one back, and so especially at home. So I think it's going to be a tougher game for the Leafs than maybe they think heading into it.
How about Utah and Vegas, the last game on the schedule for Saturday night?
Yeah, that's absolutely going to be a Vegas win. I would put my FanDuel money on that.
All right. Sunday, actually 7 games, a little heavy schedule, and we'll start with the Islanders and the Rangers at Madison Square Garden.
Well, I would leave that to you to talk about, Gil.
Well, the Islanders still can't score. They've been shut out 4 times in 10 games. Rangers are looking good, but when these two teams get together, you got to throw out the records, because it's always a little bit of a barn burner there, and the crowd will be into it at Madison Square Garden. Another great game, Tampa Bay and Winnipeg.
Yeah, obviously Winnipeg off to that very good start to the season. And I think, it's not a back-to-back for either of those teams. So I think it'll be a very good game of hockey to tune into.
The Capitals and the Hurricanes in a Metropolitan Division matchup between 2-7-2 clubs.
Yeah, I think that, or at least before the weekend starts, with them playing earlier. But yeah, that is going to be a fun game to tune into, and I think is another kind of gut check situation in terms of, are the Caps for real, and can they hang more long term with teams like the Canes?
And the Maple Leafs with back-to-back road games in Minnesota.
Yeah, this is a tough trip for the Leafs. I think having that back to back on the road like that, and Minnesota, will be having a day off in between to kind of reset heading into that game. So it's going to be tough for Toronto, I think, in Minnesota.
And last but not least, how about the Battle of Alberta? Always entertaining, Calgary and Edmonton.
Who wants it more or who doesn't? I don't know. I think that's kind of where we're at with these teams.
Yeah, I think that's right. All right. Well, that is going to do it for us. I want to thank everyone for making Locked On NHL your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. You can find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Gil Martin. I will be back on Monday with interviews with three of our local hosts covering the biggest stories from around the league. I want to thank Erica Ayala joining us every other week for the Women's Hockey Spotlight. And Rachel, always great to do this Friday show with you. Have a great weekend, everyone, and thanks for listening to and watching the Locked On NHL podcast.